John Denton, OrlandoMagic.com. John, how are you? Jeff? How do you guys balance need with what the team needs with best player available? How do you weigh that balance?
I think we're early on in the process to be talking about drafting to need. Even teams that are further along probably these days look at the draft as a way to add talent. Certainly where we are, that's probably prudent for us. So obviously we want to move forward, we want to improve the team, but I think the draft is a time, especially with the higher selections, where you're trying to add talent and a guy who you can really grow with.
Philip Rossman-Reich, OrlandoMagicDaily.com. I'll try and talk slower this time.
No, that's already better.
As you've gone through this process of evaluating the prospects, is there an essential quality that you're looking for in the players that you want to draft, whether it be at 6 or 25, 33, 35? Is there an essential quality you're looking for specifically that maybe is intangible?
Definitely. That's the nature of the draft, is we all have these paradigms of we're going to draft this type of person and this type of player. And we're all human beings. We're dealing with human beings. It's never going to be just the way you want it. But that being said, when I was here last time, I told you guys we want talented players who play for each other. That's where we start the conversation. And then from there we go into different layers of their personalities and their characters and their skill sets, but that's at the core of what we want to try to do.
How strenuous, Josh Robbins, Orlando, how strenuously has the team attempted to trade up from number 6?
I don't know if we do anything strenuously, but we've had discussions with everyone up and down. And you're more kind of feeling out where guys are and what they're trying to do. I do think that we're in a very good position at 6, where you can make a case that 6 is going to be as good as 1. So I think that the way that the draft is viewed right now, 6 is a pretty good spot to be in. And so we've talked to everybody, but I don't think we're working in overdrive to try to get to a certain part of the draft, and we're very content sitting at 6.
Christian Bruley, WFTV. John, with all your experience, is there something you hearken back to when you go into drafts that has worked out for you in the past, and how much experience do you have with 4 picks in one draft?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to really hearken back to, except we all try to do the best job we possibly can, work through the process, like every other team. And, you hope at the end of the day you harken back for some good luck. And, the multiple picks are a great opportunity for us. Gives us some flexibility going into the draft evening as to maybe possibly moving up into the draft or moving in for future assets. So it gives us some flexibility.
How much have you guys worked with Frank to see what he wants and learn the team, learn the guys, to figure out what you have on hand and then to add to it?
That's a great question. We spent a lot of time with Coach, and obviously, value his input greatly. The draft is a part of the year where more the Matt Lloyds and those guys kind of have the layer of expertise that, even to an extent that John and I haven't been out as much as those guys. So, we've tried to listen to everybody, but, differentiating between what our team needs are and where the draft the hands that the draft is going to play are 2 different things. And we spent a lot of time with Coach trying to understand, not just the talent level, but the dynamics of our players and the way things fit, and just trying to understand the backstory and how we can get better and grow it the right way.
Adam Shadoff from Fox 35. Now that you guys have both had a chance to be here for a while, and along the same lines, talk with Coach a little bit, what would you say the most glaring need is for the team?
Well, I think there are a lot of areas where we can improve. Most teams would probably say that. I don't think, anytime you try to pinpoint the most glaring need, then you're probably, putting your finger in one dike and like the water's spraying at you from every other direction. So we're trying not to look at it that way. I think it's more about bringing in multi-skilled guys, character guys, people who, as I said earlier, will play for each other, have talent. In today's NBA, it's such a catch-all word, but versatility, being able to switch out on multiple positions, being able to hit a shot, being able to make reads, those things just are so valuable. And, anytime you start to get too narrowly defined on what we need, you're probably like missing the ball on some of the other things that you need. And maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors can have that conversation, but for the rest of the 28 teams, I think we need to, how do we lift the whole thing up?
You mentioned at your introductory press conference that you needed to kind of listen at first and get a sense of who this team is. What do you feel, now that you've had some time to talk to coach, maybe talk to some players, what do you feel you have right now in this team, in the team as constructed?
I think we've got a lot of good young players and who are still finding their way through. And one of the most challenging things when you're dealing with a young team is that they don't know yet who they're going to be. And everybody in the NBA, you hope, has the ego strength to envision themselves with greatness. And so you've got like a bunch of young guys who all envision themselves with greatness, right? So that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. But there are some growing pains associated with that. So I think coach is very high on our young guys. It's not just a coach finding the fit, finding how best to use a guy, but having the player grow into that role and understanding how he's going to be the most successful. So I think we're in a good place.
Cody Taylor, Basketball Insiders. With the creation of the two-way contract next year, how has that affected your guys' approach to this upcoming draft, or has it?
Luckily, we just brought in Pete D'Alessandro, who's going to be our guru on matters such as this, and he's actually been educating us a little bit. I honestly will tell you that probably right now it's a little further down the food chain of priorities and where we're spending the majority of our time, but it's something that the whole league kind of has to learn right now. None of us have gone through it before. How's that going to work out? Which guys are going to be the guys that are listening to those conversations? What's the value of having those guys as opposed to a straight D-League player? So it's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you, but we'll kind of have to learn as we go, I think, on that one.
This is for either or both of you. Is there a potential concern of adding potentially up to four rookies at one time to a roster that's still relatively young?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a concern. I mean, we're having discussions with a lot of teams regarding those picks. They're valuable picks. They're not too far from the first round, and there are many different ways to use those picks. And at the end of the day, there are enough good players there that if we do end up drafting four players, so be it. We're not going to make a bad trade just because we don't want to add good young players. So, but that being said, Josh, I mean, I think it's probably an accurate statement to say that we have a very young team, and to bring in four rookies on one day is probably not option A. Sometimes you have to make option B work, but those picks have some value, and the way that we're engaging with other teams right now, I think that the value will continue to increase as guys study the draft.
John and Jeff, you guys, this is the fourth time you've worked together. A lot of draft rooms are crazy, maybe some arguments back and forth, but you guys know each other. How much will that experience help you on a draft night when it comes down to making key decisions?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
We've been through this a few times, and I think for the most part we've had good fortune in going through these processes. And I've always thought of Jeff as a great evaluator of talent. He's great on draft night in those decision-making moments, so we'll find a way to make it work.
Jeff, do you believe in this idea in this draft particularly that there are really 6, 7, 8 elite players, and then that's one tier and the rest is a very second tier, a clear line there?
I won't comment on what we believe, but I do think that that's what the league believes, and that puts us in a good position. So, what we discuss, obviously, we can't bring outside that room, but as John always says, perception in the NBA is often reality. And so I will tell you that I believe that the conversation for a team to get into 6 is a vastly different conversation from a team to get to 7, for whatever that's worth.
John, you've worked with Jeff before, but this is his first time kind of in the lead chair, kind of leading the process. How do you think he's, having someone who's watched him grow, how do you think he's handled managing the run-up to the draft as he prepares to make this big decision?
He's been great. I think we've been very organized and prepared, and I can tell you we've been very diligent in the work that we've done, and we've been working very hard, and so I think we're ready, and I think we'll make all these picks work. Whatever we end up keeping and what we decide doing, we'll make it work.
Dan Savage, OrlandoMagic.com. Just talk about the advantage of having a G League team over in Lakeland and how they can help you develop some of these young prospects you get in the draft.
That I can speak to firsthand. Just having come from Toronto, where we had the team in Mississauga, it's such a huge advantage to be able to put a coaching staff first in place that's going to be in concert with the Orlando Magic coaching staff. And then shuttling players back and forth between the two so that the calls, the plays, all the actions are the same. So there's no lag time in a guy having to pick up nuances of the offense or anything like that. That's a huge piece. For a guy being able to go practice with the big team, go play a game with the Lakeland team, and then sleeping in his own bed that night and going to practice the next morning with the big team, huge. I mean, you're really at such a competitive advantage about just being able to generate reps. So much. Someone said to me this year about one of our guys in Toronto, you guys get so much credit for developing the young guys, but actually the only real way to develop a guy is to play him. And it's so true. And so you get to play these guys. These guys get actual minutes and then come back and be coached by the, so it's going to be a huge advantage. I'm really excited about it. Obviously, still getting to know the area and the logistics and all this, how it's going to, work itself out. But it's a huge opportunity for us.
Have you guys noticed, is it different now with shooting? Shooting's always at a premium, but now it seems like all 5 positions need to be able to shoot. Some of the best teams in the league are 3-point heavy teams. Is that more of a premium than maybe other drafts going in?
I think shooting is always at a premium. I mean, it's always, I know for as long as I've been around basketball, and weigh in if you feel differently, but, like the first skill you always ask about is, can the guy shoot? But to your point, John, I mean, I do feel that, the league is obviously changing in front of our eyes, and it's becoming a league of 3-point shooters and stretch bigs and 3-and-D guys, and it's like there's a whole new lexicon being introduced to all of us, and so that is a paramount skill as we evaluate players.
Despina Martin, News 13 and Spectrum Sports. John or Jeff, with the possibility of a trade on draft night, are there any of the guys in the locker room right now that are off the table?
Can't tell you that. No, those are, it's a great question. Obviously, these are the sorts of things that we spend time discussing and that other teams are trying to find out themselves. And I think that, labeling people like untradeable or this or that is, we're all trying to make our teams better. And, but obviously information, such as that has to, we have to prioritize how we're going to get better, how we're going to win, what the discussions are with other teams, and they have to do the same with us. You know, so it's a matter of kind of like, you know, slowly learning the team, figuring out like who are the triggers, who are the guys that drive winning for us, you know. And with us being here just recently, you know, patience, you know, is somewhat of a virtue for us too, you know.
Jeff, you hinted at the value of the 2 second-round picks. In your time doing this, is there something that you find in second-round picks that have been successful in this league that they have? Is it an intangible? Is it that they come out with a chip on their shoulder because they weren't a first-rounder? Is there something in those guys that you've seen with the Draymond Green in the league now?
That's a great question. That is a great question. You know, I don't know how to approach a second-round pick any differently than a first-round pick. You know, you're evaluating the player, you're evaluating his body of work. You know, you're probably picking from a different pool of players. And obviously you're picking from a different pool of players. But what I mean is you're probably looking at guys who are either labeled as some sort of red flag in their background, or that may be 4-year guys that, you know, the league feels like, well, these guys are closer to their ceiling. There's not much built-in development. And I don't know if it's just been like a stroke of luck or a coincidence or whatever, but I know that, you know, John in Milwaukee recently had a 4-year player do well, and we did the same in Toronto. And so I don't know if, but I can tell you that we're considering strongly some players that don't have those resumes in the second round. So I think every guy is different. It's a great question, and I'm kind of stumped, to tell you the truth. I don't know how to approach, you know, a second-round pick any differently than a first-round pick. You have to weigh all the information, and, you know, maybe that the chip on the shoulder does come into play with certain guys. Maybe if they have, you know, if a guy's like a draft slider who we expected to go 20 and there he is at 35, maybe that factors in.
Okay, final question, Josh.
What kind of work needs to be done or accomplished by the two of you and your colleagues in the front office between now and the first pick of the draft?
You know, another really good question, Josh. You know, in a typical year, I would say all we do right now is listen, talk to teams, figure what's out there, and just, you know, discuss what our options are. You know, by this time, you know, in a typical year, I would say, you know, that everything else is behind us. But since it's a new group, we are watching video. We're still kind of like comparing notes on players and trying to put in a lot of extra work. So, you know, the whole staff, Matt Lloyd, all of our scouts, they've been putting in a lot of work this last week. And we've been in the office late every night. And so we're trying to, I would say, kind of like do multiple jobs right now. But I think we're getting to a place where we're able to be caught up and be able to have the appropriate discussions, which is now's the time to talk to teams, figure what's truly out there, you know, and assess like what our options are.
All right. Thank you very much.